It's like, where is the mic? Where is the mic? At one point she yelled, give me a fucking mic. And they didn't give it.
Hi, everybody. All eyes in the room are locked on him. The air is thick with formality, respect, and tension. Then, out of nowhere, Meghan Markle strides onto the stage. No cue, no invitation, just a fearless move that stops everyone in their tracks. She walks right past him, completely ignoring him. Harry stiffens. He turns his head just enough to notice her, but this time he does not hand over the microphone. The mic stays in his hands. Meghan could have said, "Oh, here's my wife," and passed it over, but she doesn't. For years, the story was simple. Harry gave Meghan the spotlight. Every time he stepped aside so she could shine. But tonight, everything flips. The dynamic we thought we knew, gone. And the reaction, not the cheers Meghan expected. Not even polite claps, just a frozen, icy silence that hits like a warning shot. And here's the kicker. What happened on that stage was just the beginning. The story didn't end when Meghan walked off. It triggered a chain reaction of humiliation, media spin, and whispers of betrayal that haunted them long after the lights dimmed. Think the silence was brutal? Wait until you hear what insiders are saying about the fallout behind closed doors. This isn't just awkward. It's a glaring sign that Harry and Meghan's polished facade is starting to crack. Insiders are spilling the real story of how Meghan Markle stumbled. Was Harry refusing to hand over the mic his first real act of pushback? Drop your thoughts below. For a moment, even Harry looked taken aback, his eyes narrowing just a fraction as the reality hit him. Meghan placed her hand on his back, that familiar signal saying she wanted the spotlight.
Where's this guy? This guy with the purple jacket is trying to block her from going on stage.
In the past, that simple gesture always ended with Harry handing over the microphone instantly. But tonight, not a chance. His grip on the mic tightened, his posture straightened. Instead of stepping aside, he kept speaking, his voice calm but firm. Right there, under the unblinking glare of cameras, the energy in the room flipped instantly. What should have been a seamless, united moment turned tense, awkward, like witnessing a silent argument explode in public.
And she goes around him, she even ignores him.
Wow.
She ignores the guy.
Meghan forced a smile, her hand lingering just long enough to signal she wasn't backing down. But Harry, his focus stayed locked on the crowd, unwavering, refusing to break. In that single, loaded exchange, everything changed. The room didn't erupt with applause, no polite claps, no murmurs of approval, not even a sympathetic chuckle. The crowd was frozen, utter silence. Meghan stood beside Harry, her smile fixed, waiting for the acknowledgement she assumed would come. Seconds stretched into eternity, each tick of the clock making the tension feel heavier, sharper, almost unbearable. It was the kind of silence that screamed louder than any words could. Harry pressed on with his speech, calm, steady, refusing to let the awkwardness near him break his focus. Meghan lingered in that spotlight, eyes searching for a nod, a cheer, anything to break the ice.
Now, Harry has full control of the mic. When Meghan walked on stage, she could have said, "Oh, here's my wife," and hand over the microphone. Did he do it? No.
But nothing. The audience wasn't hostile. It was worse. They were indifferent. And in the world of royalty, indifference is the cruelest kind of rejection. Finally, with nothing to latch onto, Meghan shifted her weight, shot a glance at Harry, and slowly retreated to the sidelines. The walk back wasn't long, but every step felt like a mile. Each move screamed concession, a silent acknowledgement that the crowd had picked a side, and it wasn't hers. Observers later described the room as ice cold, the kind of atmosphere where everyone felt something had gone wrong but no one dared move. Meghan's exit wasn't planned, and everyone knew it, but the silence? It was only the start of the fallout. By the next morning, the awkward tension on stage had vanished from mainstream coverage. Social media, though, that told a completely different story. Clips of the raw, unfiltered moment surfaced, Meghan stepping up, the crowd frozen, Harry refusing to hand over the microphone. These short videos went viral, racking up millions of views in hours. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Official outlets showed perfect harmony, while the uncut footage screamed tension and discord. Critics slammed the media for shielding Meghan, protecting her from what could have been a brutal PR disaster. Supporters said the silence was overblown, just a misread of body language. But the fact stayed the same. The truth had been split in two. One version ran on TV, the other burned across social feeds. and this wasn't a coincidence.
What?
This guy right behind Harry, the same guy that rejected to give her the mic last year, or is looking at her and he doesn't care.
Royal coverage has always been curated, but this time the edits didn't just soften the story, they flipped it entirely. The bigger question, if this moment could be rewritten, how many others have been hidden from view? Look closer and it's obvious, this wasn't just about one speech, it was about control. For years, Harry was seen as the man who bent over backward for Meghan, always stepping aside so she could take the spotlight. But in that single instant, he drew a line in front of thousands. And it wasn't just about a microphone, it was a signal. Resistance. That tiny refusal hinted at a power shift, not only in their marriage, but in how the world now sees them. Harry's royal status only adds to the confusion. Officially, he's been stripped of certain titles and duties, yet at select international events, he's still introduced as Prince Harry, with reverence reserved for working royals. Mixed signals everywhere, neither fully in nor fully out. Meghan, standing beside him now, looks even more like an outsider trying to force her way into relevance. This ambiguity isn't accidental. Insiders whisper that Buckingham Palace deliberately keeps Harry's role murky, handing recognition when convenient, pulling it away when not. It keeps suspense alive, feeds headlines, and ensures the Sussexes stay in the conversation, whether they like it or not. Either way, the cracks are no longer hidden. Behind the polished photos and public smiles, the fiercest battles aren't about speeches or microphones. They're about family. Sources close to the couple reveal that Harry desperately wants his children to experience pieces of the tradition he grew up with. He's spoken about Eton, the elite British school attended by generations of royals, imagining Archie walking the same halls he once did. For Harry, it's more than just education. It's heritage, a lifeline to the world he left behind. To some, it looks less like negotiation and more like leverage. This tug of war has come to define their relationship. Meghan seems to hold the upper hand in private decisions, steering the family with unshakable resolve. Harry, once happy to follow, is starting to push back.
I curtsied as though I was like, "Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty." Like, was that okay?
It's really quite sad.
Friends say he's growing frustrated, quietly craving a connection to his past, while feeling trapped by Meghan's firm refusals. Meghan's sudden stage entry was bold, but what followed was brutal. Event organisers quietly made a clear adjustment. Meghan was removed from the spotlight for the rest of the evening. Instead of her usual front and centre place, she was escorted to a side seat. Close enough to be seen, far enough to signal she wasn't in charge. No formal announcement was needed. The message was crystal clear. Her role had been downgraded. The optics only made it worse. Observers noted that her designer gown, meant to dazzle, looked oddly stiff under the harsh lights. Social media commentators pointed out her tight expression, her strained smile. While Harry mingled effortlessly with guests, Meghan sat stiffly, clapping at the right moments, rarely engaged by anyone nearby. For someone used to commanding the stage, the crowd's silence and the organisers' indifference landed like a quiet, sharp humiliation. Critics pounced on every detail. Forced laughter, awkward posture, even the way her jewellery reflected the lights, echoes of past glamour, not the present moment. Supporters claimed it was oversight, but witnesses knew better. This wasn't a mistake. The shift was subtle, but devastating. For the first time, Meghan wasn't just ignored, she was sidelined, and as the night dragged on, it became painfully clear. The audience had no interest in helping her reclaim control. But the palace, as always, it had a game of its own. While Meghan wrestled with the sting of being pushed aside, contradictory headlines began flooding out within hours. Some framed Harry as a respected prince, treated with the same reverence as when he lived in the UK. Others pushed the opposite story, a man stripped of titles, cut off from royal privilege. This wasn't sloppy reporting, it was strategy. By keeping Harry's role ambiguous, the palace fuels constant speculation. Every event becomes a guessing game. Will he be honoured or dismissed as an outsider? That uncertainty drives endless debates, sells papers, and keeps the Sussexes at the centre of the royal conversation, whether the family likes it or not. For the first time, Meghan wasn't simply ignored. She was strategically sidelined, and the implications rippled through the room like a quiet shockwave. As the evening wore on, it became painfully obvious that the audience wasn't going to help her reclaim any sense of authority or control. Their attention drifted elsewhere, leaving her increasingly isolated in plain sight. But the palace, as always, was orchestrating its own carefully calibrated play. While Meghan struggled with the sting of being pushed out of the spotlight, media outlets began rolling out contradictory narratives within hours. Some painted Harry as the prince still worthy of reverence, treated with the same ceremonial respect as when he actively served the crown in the UK. Others doubled down on the story of a man stripped of titles, distanced from royal privilege, a figure whose relevance was fading. This wasn't careless reporting or journalistic inconsistency. It was a calculated strategy designed to keep the world guessing. By deliberately leaving Harry's role ambiguous, the palace transforms every public appearance into a guessing game. Would he be introduced with honor, a symbol of royal continuity, or dismissed quietly, relegated to the periphery as an outsider? That uncertainty fuels endless speculation, drives conversation, and guarantees that the Sussexes remain a constant point of attention, whether the royal family approves or not. Meghan's presence in this high-stakes game adds a complex layer. She is simultaneously a magnet for global attention and a lightning rod for criticism. Her every move, every expression is analysed, dissected, and debated, amplifying the scrutiny she faces while also keeping audiences engaged. Insiders argue that Buckingham Palace has mastered this method through decades of experience. Rather than pushing the Sussexes completely out of public view, they are kept dangling at the edges of relevance, visible enough to generate headlines, yet distant enough to avoid allowing them any real influence or control. The careful orchestration recalls previous strategies employed with figures like Sarah Ferguson, where visibility was balanced with restraint, ensuring that the monarchy's image remained dominant while still allowing peripheral personalities to create drama and attract attention. In this delicate balancing act, Meghan becomes both a tool and a challenge, her polarizing presence highlighting the tension between spectacle and control, autonomy and authority, while the palace silently ensures that the conversation about her, about Harry, about the limits of influence, never stops. For the first time, Meghan wasn't just ignored, she was deliberately marginalized, subtly pushed out of the central frame, and the effect on both the room and the cameras was undeniable. As the evening unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the audience, whether consciously or unconsciously, was complicit in this sidelining. Their eyes, their gestures, their brief nods of attention all reinforced the reality that Meghan's attempt to assert herself in the spotlight was not only failing, but being quietly resisted. Meanwhile, the palace moved with calculated precision behind the scenes, setting the stage for a narrative that would control perception long after the event ended. Within hours, conflicting reports and headlines began circulating. Some portrayed Harry as a respected prince, still accorded the honor and reverence reserved for those who actively serve the crown, while others emphasized the opposite, painting him as a figure stripped of privileges, a man distanced from the monarchy and its traditional influence. This duality was far from accidental. It was a carefully orchestrated strategy to maintain tension, intrigue, and public engagement. By keeping Harry's role ambiguous, the palace ensured that every subsequent event would be scrutinized through a lens of speculation. Would he be recognized as a legitimate royal authority, or quietly relegated to the periphery as someone whose influence had been deliberately curtailed? This deliberate uncertainty fuels endless conversation and debate, keeping both the public and media in a state of constant curiosity while reinforcing the palace's control over perception. Meghan's role in this delicate equation is equally complex. Her presence guarantees attention, attracting clicks, international headlines, and intense scrutiny. But her polarizing persona ensures that every misstep, every awkward smile, and every perceived slight becomes a focal point for criticism. Insiders suggest this balance is intentional. Buckingham Palace has mastered the art of keeping controversial figures in view without granting them real influence, a strategy designed to protect the monarchy's image while allowing peripheral personalities to generate drama and maintain public interest. This is not a new tactic. It echoes the approach once applied to figures like Sarah Ferguson, where visibility was granted selectively, enough to create intrigue, yet always controlled to prevent disruption. In this environment, Meghan exists as both a magnet for attention and a subtle cautionary figure, her every move examined for signs of tension, challenge, or ambition. The optics of the evening, the shifting positions, the side seating, the strained expressions were all amplified by this carefully curated backdrop. For Harry, the ambiguity of his status and the subtle power plays surrounding him serve to highlight the complexity of his position. Caught between past expectations, personal desires, and the relentless pressure of public perception, he navigates a minefield where every decision, no matter how private, has public consequences. The combination of palace strategy, media manipulation, audience behavior, and personal dynamics created a moment that was about far more than a single stage or a single microphone. It was a snapshot of influence, control, and the intricate choreography that governs how power is displayed, shared, and contested within one of the world's most scrutinized families. For the first time, Meghan wasn't merely overlooked. She was actively marginalized, strategically placed on the sidelines in a way that sent a message to everyone in the room without a single word being spoken. The effect on the audience was immediate. Guests who had expected to witness the usual carefully choreographed display of harmony suddenly found themselves in the middle of a subtle but unmistakable power play. Their attention shifted, their smiles faltered, and even casual observers sensed the undercurrent of tension that had suddenly taken over the space. Meanwhile, behind the polished optics, the palace was operating with precision, orchestrating a narrative that would extend far beyond the confines of the event itself. Within hours, conflicting reports began circulating across social and traditional media, each headline carefully calibrated. Some outlets emphasized Harry as a respected prince, highlighting the ceremonial honors and formal introductions that still marked his appearances at select events, reinforcing the image of continuity and respect. Others framed him as a man stripped of his titles, a royal in limbo, emphasizing his removal from official duties and the privileges that once defined him. This deliberate ambiguity was no accident. It was a calculated strategy designed to keep the public, journalists, and even the couple themselves guessing, creating a persistent state of intrigue that ensured the Sussexes remained at the center of conversation, regardless of how they acted. Meghan's role in this equation was equally complex and deliberate. Her presence guaranteed attention and engagement, yet her polarizing image amplified every misstep, every awkward pause, every forced smile, making her both a tool and a target in this ongoing game of perception. Insiders suggest that the palace has perfected this approach over decades, learning from previous controversies, from Sarah Ferguson to other peripheral royals, in order to maintain control over the narrative while still allowing figures on the fringes to generate headlines and maintain public interest. The optics of the night, her repositioning, the carefully maintained distance from the main stage, the way her gestures and expressions were scrutinized under the camera lens were all amplified by this broader strategy. For Harry, the ambiguity surrounding his role created a unique and delicate tension, caught between his desire to protect and support his family, his longing to maintain ties to the traditions of his upbringing, and the unyielding gaze of the public and media. He was forced to navigate a landscape in which every minor gesture, every facial expression, and every choice carried outsized consequences. The interaction wasn't just about Meghan's sidelining or Harry's stance. It was a glimpse into the intricate web of influence, perception, and control that governs the modern monarchy. In this environment, every handshake, every smile, and every placement on the stage functions as a coded message, revealing loyalties, asserting authority, and quietly negotiating boundaries in a world where image and power are inseparable. For the first time, Meghan wasn't simply overlooked or politely ignored. She was methodically and unmistakably sidelined, placed in a position that sent a powerful message to everyone in the room without a single word from anyone. The effect on the audience was immediate, subtle, yet electric. Guests who had anticipated the usual royal choreography of harmony and deference suddenly found themselves witnesses to an entirely different spectacle, a quiet but undeniable shift in the balance of power. Eyes darted, whispers floated between attendees, and even casual onlookers couldn't ignore the tension radiating from her repositioning. Meanwhile, the palace operated like a masterful conductor behind the scenes, manipulating optics and narratives with calculated precision. Within hours, conflicting media reports emerged, each carefully engineered to serve a purpose. Some outlets presented Harry as a prince still deserving of reverence, emphasizing the ceremonial introductions and honors he continued to receive at select international events, portraying him as a figure of continuity and stability. Other outlets did the opposite, framing him as a man stripped of titles, removed from formal duties, and distant from the privileges that once defined his role, emphasizing his liminal status. This duality wasn't the result of sloppy reporting. It was a deliberate strategy designed to keep the public guessing, maintain speculation, and ensure that the Sussexes remained central to conversation, coverage, and debate. Meghan's presence in this carefully constructed theatre added another layer of intrigue. She simultaneously attracted attention and provoked scrutiny, making her every gesture, expression, and movement a focal point for commentary. Her poised smiles, her occasional stiff claps, the way her designer gown reflected the harsh stage lights, all of it became material for analysis, magnified by her polarizing image. Insiders say that Buckingham Palace has long mastered this approach, balancing visibility with restraint, learning from the way figures like Sarah Ferguson were handled, leaving controversial personalities visible enough to draw interest, but distant enough to prevent them from wielding genuine influence. The optics of Meghan's repositioning, coupled with the audience's subtle reactions and the press's contradictory coverage, created a pressure cooker of tension. For Harry, this ambiguity and manipulation generated a complex emotional landscape, torn between protecting his family, reconnecting with the traditions of his upbringing, and navigating the relentless gaze of a global audience. He was forced to manage both optics and reality simultaneously. Each gesture, glance, and movement became loaded with meaning, signaling loyalty, asserting authority, or negotiating unspoken boundaries in real time. Even minor changes, like Meghan's shift from centre stage to the sidelines, became symbolic markers of influence, authority, and relevance. Observers noted that the silence around her, the polite indifference of other attendees, and the calculated framing by the press amplified a sense of humiliation without overt confrontation. The evening was transformed from a formal event into a high-stakes theatre of perception, where every subtle interaction, clap, smile, handshake, or glance communicated volumes. This was not simply about who stood where or who spoke first. It was a meticulously choreographed display of power, control, and influence that revealed fractures, alliances, and tensions that the public rarely sees. Every camera angle, every social media clip, and every headline served as another thread in this intricate web, ensuring that the narrative surrounding Harry and Meghan was always alive, always contested, and always compelling. The consequence was a living, breathing story of optics, manipulation, and family dynamics, where nothing was left to chance, and every detail, from Meghan's posture to Harry's gaze, carried meaning, reflecting the unseen but palpable battle unfolding behind the public smiles and curated appearances. The result is a delicate choreography of dominance, submission, and perception, in which the stakes are magnified by the constant scrutiny of the public, the press, and the royal institution itself. Even minor adjustments, like Meghan's repositioning, become loaded with meaning, signaling shifts in influence, preference, and control that few in the room can openly acknowledge, but everyone senses, turning an otherwise ordinary evening into a battlefield of optics and unspoken tension that extends far beyond the cameras, the stage, and the event itself. For the first time, Meghan wasn't merely overlooked. She was intentionally and unmistakably marginalized. The subtle shift in her positioning on the stage sent ripples through the room, altering the energy in ways no one could ignore. Guests who had anticipated the usual choreographed display of harmony were caught off guard. Conversations paused, eyes flicked between her and Harry, and a strange, almost electric tension filled the air. Every gesture, from the slight tilt of her head to the way she shifted her weight on the side seat, became a focal point, magnified under the relentless scrutiny of cameras and witnesses alike. It was a quiet form of public judgment, unspoken but impossible to miss, and the message was devastatingly clear. Her authority had been quietly stripped away. Behind the polished veneer of the event, the palace was working like clockwork, manipulating perception with subtle yet precise tactics. Contradictory headlines flooded the media almost immediately. Some framed Harry as a prince still deserving of ceremonial respect, emphasizing the dignity and deference shown to him at certain events. Others depicted him as a man stripped of titles, an outsider removed from official duties, and someone whose influence was waning. This dual narrative wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate strategy designed to maintain constant speculation, ignite conversation, and ensure the Sussexes remained a topic of fascination for audiences worldwide. By keeping Harry's role ambiguous, the monarchy effectively transformed every public appearance into a suspenseful guessing game. Would he be honoured or ignored? The uncertainty ensured headlines, social media debates, and endless conjecture, prolonging the story long after the cameras went dark. Meghan's presence added another layer of complexity. She was both a magnet and a target, drawing eyes, clicks, and commentary, while simultaneously amplifying the scrutiny she faced. Every detail, from the tightness of her smile to the subtle stiffness in her gestures, was noted and dissected by the press, commentators, and social media audiences. Her designer gown, crafted to impress, seemed somehow ill-fitted under the harsh lighting, turning what should have been elegance into a visual metaphor for tension. Observers could see the contrast. Harry moving confidently among guests, fluid and familiar, while Meghan remained on the fringes, constrained by both her position and the subtle social cues from those around her. It was a carefully curated isolation, a combination of optics, choreography, and media manipulation that left her exposed without a single overt confrontation. For Harry, the ambiguity surrounding his status created a profound tension. He had to balance personal loyalty with the pressures of public perception, navigating a landscape where every glance, every pause, and every word carried enormous weight. Caught between protecting his family and maintaining connections to his own royal heritage, he operated under an invisible pressure that magnified even minor gestures into signals of influence, defiance, or submission. Meghan's sidelining became a symbol of these broader struggles. It wasn't about one evening or one microphone, but about control, hierarchy, and public narrative. Each motion, her clapping, her posture, the careful way she tried to remain engaged while marginalized, was scrutinized and interpreted as either strength, vulnerability, or miscalculation, adding to the story that the palace and media were quietly shaping. The audience, too, played an unwitting role. Their indifference, polite glances, and restrained reactions intensified the drama, reinforcing the sense that Meghan was no longer commanding attention or respect in the way she had in previous appearances. Cameras captured her every micro-expression, while social media amplified even the smallest details, transforming what was meant to be a ceremonial evening into a global spectacle of subtle power struggles. By the end of the night, the optics, the positioning, and the mediated narratives had woven together into a complex, high-stakes display where family dynamics, public perception, and media strategy intersected. Every element, the choreography of the palace, the responses of the audience, the framing of press coverage, worked in concert to create a layered story of influence, visibility, and tension, leaving no one in the room, and certainly no observer online, in any doubt that the dynamics between Harry and Meghan had shifted irreversibly. And there you have it, the behind-the-scenes drama the royal family won't admit, the tension, the sidelining, the power plays that unfolded right before our eyes. This wasn't just a stage moment. It was a glimpse into a fracture that's only getting bigger. If you want to stay on top of every twist, every secret, and every explosive revelation, make sure you hit that like button. It helps me bring you more stories like this. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who can't get enough of royal drama. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Trust me, the next chapter in this story is even more jaw-dropping and you won't want to miss it.